Do you remember being a child this time of year? The anticipation and magic filled the air. And you stayed on your best behavior, of course. The days were long, which meant lots of creativity. What is it about this season that is so marvelous? When was the last time that you stopped to wonder?
All right, good morning. Stop it. Hey, it is so good to be here this morning. Just want to say how glad I am to be a part of 242. I want to welcome everybody that's watching online on YouTube. Hey, if you're in here or if you're watching online, you know what really helps? If you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel and like stuff that pops up on there, that'll remind you to kind of share it with friends. And it also helps our YouTube page rank, which is really cool because people are out there looking for answers to their questions. And if they can find their answers on like a church YouTube page, that's incredible. So you can help us out by doing that. Hey, I've been on staff for about 5 months and just coming on board, and I have just been really impressed with the leaders of 242. I have seen many different staff and pastors, and here's the thing, I'm a little bit skeptical in nature. I don't know if some of you are out there like that, but I can be a little bit skeptical, and so when I was coming on board, a big church, lots of talent, lots of gifted people, I thought that there was a chance that there might be some leaders that were kind of, full of themselves or a little arrogant. And besides Kevin Davis, I just really haven't found that to be true. No, I know that Kevin watches or listens to the podcast of each of these services, so I just want you guys to hear me say that Kevin's really great. And I really enjoy working with him. But sincerely, the staff and leaders, here's what impresses me. Not necessarily how gifted and talented they are, but just I've been impressed with the authenticity, just the sincerity that I see of people just really, it's not just their motto, they're literally trying to help people take their next steps with God. It's blown me away. And so I just want to pass that on to you. If you've been coming to church here for a while, I just want to remind you of the movement that you're a part of. And if you're new, or maybe this is even your first Sunday, I just want to let you know, these folks are the real deal. No group of people is perfect. We're all full of flaws and whatnot, but this is the real deal, and you'll find some very authentic, sincere followers of Christ here. Hey, we're jumping into a new series called Wonder as we lead up to Christmas. How many people are jacked for Christmas? Yeah. How many people already have their tree up? Go ahead, you put it up. Yeah, that's right. My wife was getting ready to put the tree up when I left yesterday to do the Saturday service, which is perfect timing when I'm not there. Here's what the series is really about, that we as kids, man, we're kids, Christmas is electrifying. It's exciting and you can't wait for it. And then get into your teen years, you become an adult, and somewhere along the lines, you begin to lose like your wonder of Christmas and it starts to go away a little bit. I've witnessed this happen in my wife's life. Now, my wife is so sweet and she just loves Christmas. In fact, she is Mrs. Christmas. Like, here's how much she's into Christmas. She resents the fact that she was born in July because she believes she should have been born in December. Like, that's how much she's into it. And she has all these precious memories of her and her family doing these different traditions. And one big one was that her and her sisters, or 3 sisters, would load up with her mom and dad in a station wagon. They'd get hot cocoa, they'd listen to old school Christmas music, and they'd drive through neighborhoods and look at Christmas lights. How many other people used to have that as before we had Netflix, you remember doing that? Anyway. So that was her big tradition. Well, now we've been married for 22 years and we have 4 kids, and she has tried to make this a part of our family tradition. And so several times we've gotten in the car and the hot chocolate, the old school Christmas music, and we've driven around in neighborhoods. And I got to tell you, me and the kids absolutely hate it. I can't think of anything that I'd rather less do than be trapped with my family for 2 hours in a destination that leads to nowhere looking at subpar lighting, listening to Burl Ives sing "Have a Holly Jolly Christmas." That song is on repeat in the ninth circle of hell, I'm convinced. So over the years, we've kind of let my wife know that this isn't like our favorite thing, and she's been disappointed. And so we've taken this precious memory that she has, the wonder of Christmas, and we have pooed all over it. And that happens to a lot of us. Like, we have this wonder and we kind of try to relive our childhood, or we relive, Christmases past, and it just, reliving things, nostalgia just never works. You're set up for a failure, right? And so we have this wonder that just sort of little bit by little bit goes away. And now, as a man, a 43-year-old man, Christmas isn't electrifying, it's expensive. And so what we want to do in this series is we want to make sure, though, that we don't lose the wonder of this incredible message that God became a man. Sometimes when we're setting up the nativity scene, right, or we see other people doing that, we set it up, we forget what it's all about, that this thing that we in Christianity called the Incarnation, that an all-powerful creator being became man, just like you and me, and we miss what that really means and its implications. So we don't want to lose our wonder of that. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to unpack this story again, and hopefully we can reignite our wonder of Christmas. We're going to start today with the definition of wonder. It's got a very simple definition, but this is what the whole series is on. So here's the definition of wonder: a feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful. Check out these 4 words: beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, or inexplicable. What we're going to do over the 4 weeks is we're going to look at those 4 words, and we're going to talk about beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, inexplicable, and that's what the Christmas story is. Now, today I'm going to talk about beautiful. And I got to tell you, when I first heard this, I was a little afraid that my man card was being taken from me, because they were like, "Hey, Grant, can you teach in Brighton this weekend?" "Sure. What do you want to teach? What am I supposed to teach on?" "The beauty of Christmas." I was like, okay. But here's the thing: the more I got into it, the more I was like, well, everything that's beautiful, everything that's been made has been made by God. Like, God is a huge fan of beauty. And in your life, all of us have this in common. There's been a time and a place where we have saw something in creation that caused us to just stop dead in our tracks and go, wow, that is beautiful. And when we saw it, it was inspiring. And God is the mastermind behind all of that. So what I want to do is I want to start in the very, very beginning. Even if you haven't ever read the Bible before, you probably know how the Bible starts. The Bible starts in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, like this: in the beginning. Everybody say, in the beginning. Good. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Everything beautiful that you have ever seen in this world was created by God. And I just want you to think of those beautiful things that you've seen that just stopped you in your tracks and made you say, wow. Maybe for some of you, it was when you were in 7th grade and you saw that 8th grade girl and you were like, wow, beautiful. God made that. I know it's hard to believe. God made 8th grade girls, but God made that. Or maybe it was when you were traveling, to one of some place and you saw something, you went out of your way to see something beautiful like the Grand Canyon. Or maybe it was just when you're in the UP and you saw a sunrise or a sunset. Something caused you to be inspired. God created that. God is a creative designer and creates beauty. And then it says that God looked at everything he made. In verse 31, it says, God saw all that he had made, all that was beautiful, and it was good. It was very good. You need to know this, and if you're new to the Bible, or if you're new to understanding Christianity, you need to start right there. God created everything, and it was good and beautiful, and it wasn't just beautiful, it was perfect. Like, he stepped back from his creation and he went, yes, everything is perfect without flaw. I just wanted to take a minute to just kind of acknowledge the beauty that God created and how perfect a lot of it really is. And I want to do that by showing you some images just to kind of get us all on the same page. I just pulled some random photos I thought were beautiful scenes. Man, for me, just put me in that cabin, give me a dirt bike, and I'm set for the rest of my life. Some of you might be looking at that and going, it's Michigan winter. I think I'd rather go somewhere a little warmer. So I got this scene for you. God created this. Yeah, my Speedo is calling to me. I know some of you are super visual. Don't do it, ladies. I'm a drug you can't quit, okay? Beautiful, great. But it's not just the landscapes and stuff out there in the world. It's also the creatures. Like God got so creative when he made creatures. When I go to the zoo, I'm looking for this. This is my spirit animal right here. You put a little more hair on him, that's what I look like without my shirt on. God just made these creatures and they're just stunning. They make you step back and go, wow. And then God took it to another level and he made human beings that have their own beauty. Which I know, isn't that precious? Beautiful. And then he went even a step farther and he created us to have love. And that's hard to capture in a picture, but there is probably the most beautiful thing that God made or allows us to experience is love. So to try to capture that image, I want to show you a picture of my family. This is the Agler family right here. I'll just do a quick introduction. On the right is my 14-year-old son, Josiah. He's into what 14-year-old boys are into. In fact, the other day I came down the stairs and caught him on the laptop looking at pictures of shoes, and he thinks he needs a pair of Jordans in his life. I think he needs a job. Those things are connected. The second one in there is my oldest son, the hairy one, is Elijah. He's in his third year of college. My youngest daughter, Nevaeh, she has a will of unbreakable steel. And our prayer is just that she learns to use that for good and not evil. My oldest daughter, Megan, she actually just went off to college in Missouri this past year, so she moved out, and that was kind of sad. And then in the very back is the crown jewel of my collection, Mrs. Christmas herself, my wife, Bethany. And we've been married for 22 years, and here's the reason I show you that picture. Because there is so much love that I have. Now, you might look at that picture and you're like, yeah, people, could be photo. That might just be something I pulled off the internet. That isn't my family, for all you know. But when you look at that, it's not a whole lot. But when I see that, I see people that I never knew I was capable of loving so much. And I have experienced love from them that I didn't even know I would ever experience in my life. And God made that. And in the beginning, in Genesis chapter 1, when God created everything, it was good and it was beautiful. And he stepped back and he went, it's perfect. Nothing was flawed, nothing was broken. Just kind of highlight some things. Like in the beginning, there was perfect environment. There was no cancer. There was no death. There was no pain. There was no suffering. There was no need to labor and toil. So that means that there was no budget meetings. The environment was perfect. There were perfect relationships. And in our life, we experienced moments of perfection. There's times where your wife and you click, or your kids and you click, or maybe it's your parents, and everything is good, but those moments are fleeting and they go away very quickly. But when God created everything, those moments that we experience that are just beautiful, that are perfect, that was just all the time. That's the way God intended the world to be. On top of that, there was perfect fellowship with God. Anybody in here ever have a prayer that just sort of bounces off the ceiling? You just pray and you're just you ask those questions like, why? And where are you? And there is this deep longing, this disconnect between you and God. That becomes because there isn't a perfect relationship with us and God anymore. But when God created everything, it was perfect. We had fellowship with God. There was a connection there. And everything that's broken in the world is because that connection isn't there. Everything was perfect. Everything was beautiful. God stepped back and said, man, it's good. Well, then obviously something went wrong because, we live in the world we do. And even though we experience all of those beautiful things, it isn't exactly beautiful like that all the time. And today I want to give you the reason for that, and it is really important, especially for those of you in here who have ever asked the question, well, if God's so good, why is the world so bad? Why is there so much heartache? Why do we live in this world? If God was so good, why don't you just fix it? Why just fix it? And I want to give you the answer to that. But a lot of times when people are asking for that, they think it's going to be like one verse out of the Bible, or they think that maybe the Bible kind of skirts the issue altogether and we really don't have answers. And that's not true. Actually, what's true is that the entire Bible answers that question. From Genesis to Revelation, every story, every character, every movement in the Bible is describing the answer to the question, why is the world broken? But here's where we have to start. Right in the beginning, in the book of Genesis, we have to start with sin. That's it. Don't overlook it. That's what's broken with the world. If you don't start there, then why Jesus came to the earth and what unfolds in the rest of the Bible, that won't make a lot of sense to you, because the whole Bible is answering the question of what's really broken. And what's really broken is sin. Each and every one of us have sin. And so God created everything perfect and beautiful, and then we messed it up. And in the book of Romans, it describes how exactly we messed it up. It says in Romans 5:12, when Adam sinned, sin entered the world. So the story of Adam and Eve, and they created the first sin. Sin entered the world. It wasn't a part of God's beautiful picture. Adam's sin brought death. The reason that we don't live forever here on this earth is because we sin. And the worst thing that God could possibly allow us to do is to exist forever, right? It's bad enough that we get a short time on earth. If we lived forever and we're all full of sin, that would be bad. So Adam's sin brought death. So death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Starting with Adam and all the way up to me and you, there is a brokenness inside of us. There is a hurt that we have caused other people and other people have caused us. Now, sometimes we have a hard time seeing this because we are all trying to be good people. In fact, I think that the number one competition with Christianity isn't Islam or Hinduism or any other religion. The number one competition of Christianity has always been and will always be the gospel of, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I don't necessarily need God. In fact, I was talking to my neighbor and I was inviting him to church. And he's like, I don't need to go to church. I'm a good person. I don't need to go to church to be a good person. And I was like, brah, the first thing we teach you in church is that nobody's a good person. That nobody is good. All of us are broken. And I don't know about you, but that makes me happy. Because that means that I'm not like behind or I'm below the curve or I'm one of the bad ones. It means that like we're all on the same playing field. All of us have this brokenness inside of us called sin. And if you think to yourself, oh yeah, I know, I'm not perfect, but I don't think the things that I've done would bring about like all the ugly that we see in this world. If I were to put up on this screen a highlight reel of every selfish thing you've ever done, of every lustful thought you've ever had, of every time that you've taken advantage of somebody, you might come in here feeling like you're a pretty good person, but after we watched hours of that footage, you would walk out of here going, I am not a good person. And be able to understand the problem that God's fixing throughout Scripture, you have to start there. And so now the world we live in isn't quite as beautiful. In fact, it's kind of ugly. Let me show you some pictures of that. This is a slum in Nairobi. And what's ugly about this isn't that it's a trash heap, it's that families, people, created in the image of God to be beautiful, live in these metal huts. Another picture, sometimes I watch the news in the morning. Usually every morning I turn on the news for at least 10 minutes, and within that 10-minute window, I see something like this. Somebody's fighting, somebody's rioting, somebody can't get along. There's so much anger and hate. That's not the world that God created. God didn't create that to exist. We did that. Here's another image. This might hit kind of close to home for some of you. God never intended for that to be the norm. God didn't want to see that. This isn't beautiful. He didn't want to see disease and heartache. Ultimately, I tried to get one more image that just kind of encapsulates. God didn't want to see that. God did not want to see a tear in anyone's eyes. He created a world to be beautiful, and that is not what he created us to experience. And all of that happens because of the brokenness inside of, not you back there in the back, the bad one, not those people over there, not the ones that have done that, not them, us. Now, you might be sitting out there thinking, well, Merry Christmas to you, Grant. That's good. I'm just, happy holidays. Let's pray. But here's the point. Until we understand what's broken, we can't really have any wonder of Christmas because we don't even understand what it is that God did. And so I want to go into my favorite Christmas story. It's not the shepherd and the wise men and the manger that we normally hear. My favorite Christmas story actually is in the Gospel of John, and he starts out with not necessarily any of the details. He just starts out with the implications or the meaning of what it means that God came to earth. And I want you to check it out. Here's where he starts. John chapter 1, verse 1, he says, "In the beginning." So he takes his story, he's gonna tell about Jesus, and he's gonna unfold the gospel of everything that Jesus has done, and he's gonna lay that right over the top of the book of Genesis. He's gonna go back to the beginning, and he's gonna say, let's go back to a God that created everything to be perfect, everything to be beautiful. Let's go back there. He says, in the beginning was the Word. Now, when I first read that as a new Christian, I'm reading through that, and I read it a bunch of different times, and I looked up every other time in the Bible that the word word was used, and it still didn't make any sense. And I actually don't think it's a very great translation because it's such a big concept that's being expressed right there that we really can't get a handle on it. The word he uses for word is actually the Greek word logos. Now, I want to give you a quick definition of logos, and then I'll go to the even bigger meaning behind it. Logos simply means this: the divine reason implicit in the cosmos, ordering it and giving it form and meaning. Now, that word logos wasn't actually derived by Christians or Jews or people that had a belief in God really at all. That actually came from the philosophers, the Hellenistic Jews and the Stoic philosophers over the course of about 6 centuries. And here's how it came about. All the philosophers, as they were trying to think, these are some of the most intellectual people in the world, as they're trying to understand the big questions that we have, like where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going after we die? As they're trying to answer those big questions, they all came from different perspectives. But one thing they all agreed on that was undeniable is that there seemed to be a force driving it all. There seemed to be a source of it all. And there was something that was holding it all together. And some cultures would call that a God, or they would ascribe a different label to it. And some people would call it sort of like we do, just Mother Nature. And some people would literally just call it a force. We don't really understand it. It is just this unknown force that is driving the cosmos. And John begins to unpack his gospel by saying, what has been unknown to you, I want to make known to you. What has been unknown and has been perceived but not understood, I want to describe to you as a man. So John 1:1, he says, in the beginning was the Word, the Logos. And the Word, the Logos, was with God. And the Word, this Logos, was God. He was with God in the beginning. He says, through him, all things were made. Everything beautiful that exists was created by him. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. And then he says this, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. John's going to unpack that God created in the beginning everything perfect and beautiful, and we messed it up. And God could have walked away. The Creator could have stepped back. He could have said, well, you made the mess. I guess you just live in it. But he came back. He came back to redeem the ugly that you and I made. He came back to wash it and make it new. He came back in the form of Jesus Christ. And in John 1, he tells my favorite line of the Christmas story. And there's not a manger and there's no shepherds. There's no wise men. It's just the meaning and significance. He says in verse 14, the Word, the Logos, the Creator, the Maker, the origin of it all, the one that is holding it together, the force became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And he began to live in this world just like me and you. And he stepped into the ugly that you and I created. And he dwelled in this ugliness. And then when he became a man, he received the full force of the ugly that we created on this world when he died on a cross. And as he died and rose from the grave, he overcame what was made ugly by us. And he gave the ability for us to just simply put our faith in him. Not giving us a new standard of right and wrong, a new curve to live by, but just this, that we would just come to him sincerely, honestly, put our faith in him from our heart, and he would take care of the rest. That what he did was good enough for everyone. And all he calls us to do is just to have the want to. That's it. That's what faith is. It's just the want to. It's not a religion that you practice outwardly. It's something you've got inside of you. And God knows whether it's real or whether it's not real. And if it's authentic, if it's real, if it's pure, then God does everything else. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And then he ends by saying this about him and the other apostles. He says, we have seen his glory. We have heard his teachings. We saw what he did. We saw his miracles. We saw him die on the cross. We can testify to you guys that he actually rose from the dead. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, came back to fix what we broke, full of grace and truth. Kind of an image I want to leave you with is what that really means, that God fixed what we broke. I had an older brother, and older siblings have certain unspoken rights that the younger siblings don't have. How many people in here have an older sibling? Yeah, that's right. You know what I'm talking about. They're all sitting out there like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. We know it too. You know what I'm talking about. Well, my older brother was 2 years older than me, and he had just certain rights. One of the rights was he had the good chair. When we would sit down and would do anything, he got the good chair, and I just gave it to him. Well, one day, I'll never forget this. We were in a hardware store and there were mirrors on the wall, and I looked up and I realized for the first time that I was bigger than he was. Not just, girth, but like bigger. I had bigger shoulders. I was taller than he was, and considerably. And I looked at it and I was like, wow. And I remember thinking, things are going to change around here. There's a new sheriff in town. And I just kind of waited for my next opportunity. Well, that opportunity came on one of the most magical days of the year in Nebraska where I grew up, on Saturday when we would watch Nebraska football. It's a magical day because we don't have anything else. We don't have basketball. We don't have professional teams. We don't have another football team that we hate for some reason, like you guys do. We just have Nebraska football. And so we were sitting there coming together and watching football, and he, of course, sat in the good chair, and he got up to go get a drink, and I remember thinking, this is my moment. I'm gonna take his throne. So I went over and I sat in the chair, and he came back and he's like, I was sitting there, get up. I was like, no, I don't think I will. And he was like, no, come on. I was sitting there, get out of the chair. And I was like, make me. And he kind of grabbed my arm. He said, come on. And he pulled me out of the chair. And then I got up and I shoved him. And then he shoved me back. And I shoved him again. And he shoved me back. And then my dad, who's watching this whole thing, I'll never forget what he did. He jumped in between me and my brother and got in between us and the TV and said, don't hurt the TV! I'll never forget those words. And then we were going back and forth in this shoving match, and my brother decided he was going to level the playing field back. He was going to put me back in check. So he took a swing at me. Oh, and it was coming hard. But what he didn't know is I'd been watching Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I knew exactly what to do. And just as soon as I saw him cock back, I ducked. And it was just, I've been in many fights, or a few fights before and after, and nothing ever happened like this. But man, he threw that punch and it went right over the top of my head. I could hear the air. And then I knew what I needed to do. And I was 14 and about 245 pounds, muscle. And I came from the ground, all my body weight, with a haymaker. And I bam! And I missed his jaw, but I caught him right in the cheekbone. Knocked him back on the ground, and I stood over him, the new man of the house. And then he got back up. And he got back up, and I have never before or after seen a look in somebody's eyes quite like that. He was going to kill me. Veins were popping out of his neck and his forehead, and he was looking at me. And in that moment, I looked into his eyes, and I chickened out. And I went and ran behind my dad, and I was like, stop it, he's gonna kill me, he's gonna kill me, he's gonna kill me. And my dad broke up the fight, and he said, go out, and we lived on a corn farm. He said, go out in the cornfield and dig ditch rows while I talk to your brother, so just go calm down. So I go out in the field, and each row of corn has this ditch row that I'm digging out. I'm moving like this, and I see my dad's truck coming up, and then it gets up closer to me. I didn't even bother looking. I knew he was there. He'd come there to have a talk. And I'm shoveling these ditch rows out, and I hear him get out, and he walks up behind me, and I turn around, and it's not my dad. It's my brother. And I thought, he's gonna kill me. Right here in this cornfield. So I gripped my shovel tight, and he threw his arms around me. And he picked me up and gave me a big hug and said, I love you. And he set me back down. And even though I'm the one that punched him in the face, even though I'm the one that picked the fight, though I was the one that made everything ugly, he's the one that came all the way out to me to reconcile the relationship. I want you to know that it's you and I that messed everything up. God created everything beautiful. He could have walked away, but he loved us and cared for us so much that he came back. He came back to be one of us, to live in our ugliness, to give up everything he could possibly give, to make us beautiful again. And if you put your faith in him, he will wash you, he will make you new, and he will make you beautiful again. And that is the wonder and the beauty of this awesome Christmas message. Let me pray for you.